Tonight, I will fly over Normandy, over the villages I know by name, over the roads I cycled as a boy, and I will open the bomb doors. My commanding officer said, if we don't do it, the British will, and they will not care as much. I don't know if that makes it easier, or if anything ever could.
October 3rd, 1943. A formation of Halifax heavy bombers lifts off from a rain-soaked runway in Yorkshire, England. The crew, every last one of them, is French. Their target tonight is not Berlin, not Hamburg, not some distant enemy city. Their target is France, their country, their home. What kind of man drops bombs on the city where his mother still lives? And what kind of war forces him to make that choice? June 1940. In 6 brutal weeks, Nazi Germany overran France. The French army, once feared across Europe, collapsed. An armistice was signed. A puppet government took power in Vichy, and for millions of French citizens, the war appeared to be over. But for some, it was only just beginning. Thousands of French pilots, soldiers, and sailors escaped to Britain. They joined Charles de Gaulle's Free French forces, a government in exile, an army without a country, a resistance without borders. They swore they would fight on, and so they did, from British soil, in British plains, under British command. Welcome to Echoes of Valor X. Today we uncover the stories of the men of Groups de Bombardement 346 Guyenne and 347 Tunisie, the only French heavy bomber squadrons of the entire Allied war effort, based at RAF Elvington in Yorkshire, flying Halifax bombers on missions that no Allied aircrew had to face quite like they did. In the summer of 1940, France burns. German tanks roll through Paris. The Eiffel Tower flies a swastika. And on airfields across the country, French pilots receive orders that feel like a death sentence. Stand down. Do not resist. The war is over. Some obeyed. Many had no choice. But others, a few hundred, refused. They stole aircraft. They bribed harbor masters. They crawled onto fishing boats in the dead of night. They crossed the channel in canvas dinghies. They reached Gibraltar, then England. They arrived with almost nothing. Their rank, their wings, and their fury.
England is gray and cold and nothing like home. But I am here. I am still fighting. My squadron surrendered without firing a shot. I could not do that. I will not do that. They say de Gaulle speaks for France now. A general without an army. On a radio no one may even be listening to. But I believe him. France is not dead. She is only sleeping. And we are the ones who must wake her.
By late 1943, RAF Elvington in Yorkshire had become something extraordinary. An entirely French base. French mechanics, French cooks, French officers, French flags on British aircraft. The men of Squadrons 346 and 347 flew the 4-engine Halifax, one of the heaviest bombers in the Allied arsenal. They were by any measure elite, and they were ready to fight. But their first mission briefing would change everything they thought they knew about what it meant to go to war.
The briefing officer pulled back the curtain and showed us the red line on the map. It curved west, not toward the Ruhr, not toward Berlin, toward France. The room went completely silent, not afraid, stunned. Someone behind me whispered, "Mon Dieu," and then nothing else for a long time.
The target was the power stations at Chevilly-le-Rue, a suburb of Paris. The Germans had turned French industrial infrastructure into war machinery. Factories, power grids, rail yards, all feeding the Nazi occupation. The Allied command needed them destroyed, and they sent the French to do it. The logic was cold but real. French pilots might take greater care, fly lower, be more precise, minimize civilian casualties. Their commander, Lieutenant Colonel de Rancourt, ordered the lead aircraft to drop from extremely low altitude, dangerous in any context, suicidal over defended targets. He gave the order anyway, because French lives were below those bombs.
I thought of families getting ready for Christmas as we flew over Normandy, mothers putting children to bed, old men listening to illegal radio, my own mother, 300 kilometers south, who does not know I am up here. I told myself, the Germans are what is killing them. We are what is ending it. But at 20,000 feet, in the dark, with your thumb on a bomb release switch, the philosophy stops helping.
Some pilots refused to discuss their missions at all, not in letters home, not in the Free French press. One French pilot navigator, whose name history never recorded, was asked what drove him to take greater risks than his British counterparts. His answer was simple: we have more reason than they do to operate with less regard for our own safety, even if that adds extra risk. They flew lower through flak that should have killed them. They accepted anti-aircraft fire that American and British crews would have evaded. Because below the smoke, below the tracer fire, below the burning industrial skyline, was home, and home was worth dying for, even if you had to destroy part of it first.
We came back from the raid on the rail yards outside Rouen, and no one spoke in the crew room, not a word. We drank our tea. Someone opened a window. I could smell engine oil and rain. I kept thinking, was anyone down there? Did anyone see the bombs fall and know that the planes were French? Did they curse us? Did they understand? I will never know, and I think that might be the worst part.
Spring 1944. The liberation of Europe is being planned in secret. Thousands of Allied bombers are being redirected from German cities to French targets. Bridges, rail lines, coastal fortifications, to paralyze German movement ahead of the coming invasion. The Free French squadrons fly more sorties than ever before, and now the stakes are even higher. These are not just industrial targets. The bombers are hitting towns, villages, places with names the pilots know from childhood. Some pilots write letters home, knowing their families in occupied France may never receive them, knowing that if those families are anywhere near a target, they might not survive to read them.
My brother is in Lyon. My mother is in Clermont-Ferrand. Neither city is on my target list tonight. I checked the map 3 times. Tonight it is a bridge near Caen. I know that bridge. I fished under it when I was 12 years old. I remember the way the water smelled. I will destroy it tonight, and I am glad, because German tanks will cross it otherwise, and more men will die. But I do not feel like a hero. I feel like a man who has been asked to choose between bad things and worse things over and over, until the choosing starts to feel normal. That is what war does. It makes the unthinkable into Tuesday. Did they curse us? Did they understand? I will never know.
June 6th, 1944, D-Day. The Allied invasion of Normandy begins. In the hours before the beaches are stormed, French Halifax bombers fly support missions over the coast, bombing gun emplacements, destroying communications, hammering the defenses that will cut down thousands of men on the sand below. They bomb French soil in the dark, hours before French soil is liberated in the dawn. It is perhaps the most French thing any of them have ever done.
We flew over Normandy at 0200 hours. Below us, darkness. Then flashes. The fleet was there, 1,000 ships, maybe more. We could see the gun barrels firing even from our altitude. I thought, this is it. This is the moment we've been building toward since 1940. 4 years of exile. 4 years of bombing our own country to prepare for this night. France is down there in the dark.
Paris was liberated on August 25, 1944. The men of Elvington were not there for the parade. They were still flying missions, still bombing retreating German positions, still doing the job no one would talk about at dinner parties. When the war finally ended, they came home to a complicated welcome. France had been bombed by Allied planes, including French planes, and thousands of French civilians had died. The exact number of French civilians killed by Allied bombing during the liberation campaign is estimated at between 15 and 20,000. The men who flew those missions were heroes. They were also haunted men. Many chose never to speak publicly about what they had done. A few wrote about it in memoirs that stayed buried in family archives for decades. Louis Bourgain, whose diary opened our story today, pointedly skipped the bombing chapters when he finally published his memoirs. He said only that he was willing to fly the missions. He did not want publicity. He did not want a medal for it. He just wanted France to be free.
I walked through Paris last week for the first time in 5 years. The cafes were open, children were in the streets, the Eiffel Tower wore a French flag again. No one knows what I did. No one knows that I dropped bombs on France to help give them this day. And I think perhaps that is exactly how it should be. The ones who suffered deserve to be remembered, not the ones who caused the suffering, even in service of freedom. I am just glad it's over.
War has a way of forcing impossible choices onto ordinary people. The men of RAF Elvington were not monsters. They were not reckless. They were husbands and sons and brothers who looked at a map, saw their home, and made the decision that thousands would not. They flew anyway. And maybe that's the most honest definition of courage that exists. Not the absence of fear, not the absence of doubt, but the willingness to act despite knowing, fully knowing, what it costs. The power stations at Chevilly-Larue were destroyed. The bridges at Caen were cut. The rail yards at Rouen went dark. The German war machine in France was starved, disrupted, ground to dust, by, among others, the men who loved France enough to bomb it. History doesn't always give us clean heroes. Sometimes the bravest act and the most painful act are exactly the same thing. The diaries of the Free French pilots of RAF Elvington are still there, in archives, in attics, in the careful handwriting of men who carried something most of us will never have to carry. If this story moved you, if it made you think, there are thousands more like it, forgotten, buried, waiting. Subscribe to Echoes of Valor X, so we can keep finding them. We'll see you in the next one.